There's a photograph buried in Soviet military archives. Two men in white lab coats standing side by side in an ordinary engineering office in Moscow. One is Boris Bunkin, the other is Pyotr Grushin. Between them, these two men would build the weapon system that terrified NATO for 3 decades and is still killing people today. In 1968, when Bunkin took charge of the Almaz Design Bureau, he didn't feel like a man building the future. He felt like a man running out of time. American cruise missiles were getting smarter. NATO fighters were getting faster. And the backbone of Soviet air defense, massive, immovable launch sites scattered across the motherland, was becoming a death trap. Vietnam had already shown what happened to fixed missile batteries. American wild weasel pilots had turned hunting them into an art form. Locate the radar, lock on, destroy, repeat. The Soviets didn't need a better missile. They needed to reinvent air defense from scratch, a system that could detect stealth, chase cruise missiles at treetop level, engage 6 targets simultaneously, and do it all from the back of a truck that could vanish before the counterattack arrived. What Bunkin delivered wasn't just a weapon, it was a philosophy of warfare the world is still catching up to. They called it the S-300, but this isn't just a story about rockets and trucks. It's about the engineers who broke the rules of physics to build it, the proxy wars that proved its predecessors were failing, and the brutal modern battlefields where it's being put to the ultimate test right now. This is the story of how it was built, how it works, and what happens when it meets real combat. Let's begin. The story of the S-300 begins with a failure. Throughout the 1960s, the Soviet Union maintained the largest air defense network in human history. Systems like the S-75 Divina, famous for shooting down Gary Power's U-2 in 1960, and the longer-range S-200 were deployed in massive numbers. On paper, impressive. In reality, dangerously obsolete. The problem was architecture. These systems were nailed to the ground, permanent positions, long setup times, predictable locations, and predictable meant dead. In the skies over North Vietnam, wild weasel aircraft carrying anti-radiation missiles turned Soviet SAM sites into targets. The wars in the Middle East hammered the same lesson home. Static defenses, no matter how dense, could be suppressed and destroyed by a determined adversary with electronic warfare and precision weapons. And the threat was getting worse. The United States was developing the BGM-109 Tomahawk, a cruise missile that could fly hundreds of kilometers hugging the terrain, invisible to conventional radar. Programs like Have Blue were pioneering stealth technology. The Soviets faced the possibility that their entire air defense infrastructure could become obsolete overnight. In 1967, a classified directive went to the Almaz Central Design Bureau. Create a unified mobile air defense platform capable of engaging aircraft at any altitude, cruise missiles at any speed, and ballistic warheads, all simultaneously. It had to track dozens of threats at once, fire at 6 of them at the same time, and be fully operational within minutes of arriving at a position, then pack up and disappear before the enemy could strike back. It was, by any standard, an engineering moonshot. Boris Vasilievich Bunkin took charge. A radar engineer who'd graduated from the Moscow Aviation Institute in 1947, he'd spent decades climbing through the Soviet defense establishment, from the US-25 Berkut defending Moscow, to the mobile S-75, to the long-range S-2020. He had over 400 publications and 33 patents. He was the most qualified person alive for this job. His team faced seemingly impossible challenges. They needed a phased array radar powerful enough to detect small targets at 300 kilometers, compact enough to fit on a truck. They had to network multiple radars and launchers into a single automated organism sharing data in real time. They needed a new missile with cold vertical launch from a sealed canister. And they had to automate the entire kill chain so reaction time was measured in seconds, not minutes. Production started in 1975. By 1978, the first variant, the S-300 PT, entered service protecting Moscow, nuclear command centers, and ICBM silos. It was semi-mobile with towed launchers, a step forward, but not the revolution. That came in 1983 with the S-300 PS, the S for Samochodny, self-propelled. Every component mounted on MAAZ 7910 8x8 trucks. A full battery could stop, deploy, acquire targets, and be ready to fire in under 5 minutes, then pack up and vanish before retaliation arrived. The 5555 missile embodied what Bunkin called guaranteed reliability. Sealed in its container at the factory, it could remain combat ready for over 10 years without maintenance. Thousands could be stockpiled without logistical burden. The Soviets hadn't built a better mousetrap. They'd invented an entirely new category of weapon, the Mobile Integrated Air Defense System. A rolling fortress of denial that could materialize on any road, in any clearing, control hundreds of cubic kilometers of airspace, and disappear like smoke before anyone could retaliate. For the first time, airspace denial wasn't tied to a fixed location. It could move with the army, protect a city one day, a missile silo the next. NATO gave it a fitting code name, Grumble. Calling the S-300 a missile system is like calling an aircraft carrier a boat. It's an integrated combat network where radar vehicles, command trucks, and launchers function as a single organism. Understanding it means understanding three layers: what it sees with, what it thinks with, and what it kills with. The S-300 uses an interlocking family of specialized radars working in concert. No single point of failure. The 64N6 Big Bird surveillance radar is the early warning sentinel. Its phased RA antenna sweeps 360 degrees, detecting fighter-sized targets beyond 300 kilometers and tracking up to 100 objects simultaneously. It classifies returns by speed, altitude, and radar cross-section, building a real-time air picture. Once Big Bird finds a threat, the 30N6 flap-lid fire control radar takes over. Using electronically steered beams instead of mechanical rotation, it locks onto targets with extraordinary precision, jumping between them almost instantaneously. A single flap lid can guide missiles against 6 targets at once, 2 interceptors per target, 12 missiles in the air simultaneously. For the deadliest threat, cruise missiles skimming the ground, there's the 76N6 clamshell low-altitude detector. Mounted on a mast extending up to 40 meters, it peers over terrain and tree lines to catch threats hiding below the radar horizon. This layered architecture is the system's ultimate insurance policy. It means the S-300 keeps fighting even under sustained attack. Knock out the flap lid with an anti-radiation missile, and the Big Bird can still provide basic tracking data. Blind one radar with electronic jamming, and the others operate on completely different frequency bands. Destroying the entire sensor network of a well-dispersed S-300 battery requires not a single lucky shot, but a sustained suppression campaign. And every minute that campaign takes is a minute the battery can shoot back or pack up and relocate. All sensor data flows into the 54K 6 command post vehicle, the system's central nervous system. Inside, operators watch synthesized battlespace displays. But the real power is the software. The combat management system processes raw radar data, filters clutter and decoys, identifies genuine threats, ranks them by priority, assigns them to launchers, and calculates firing solutions, all in seconds. Against a supersonic fighter closing at over 1 kilometer per second, this speed is the difference between a kill and a miss. The operator's role is largely supervisory, confirming the system's recommendation and authorizing the shot, rather than calculating the intercept solution themselves. This was a radical design philosophy for its era, and it paid off. A single 54K 6 command post can coordinate up to 6 separate batteries, each with its own launchers and radars, knitting them into a unified defensive zone that can stretch across hundreds of kilometers. If one battery goes down, the others redistribute the workload seamlessly. The whole is far greater than the sum of its parts. 4 missiles ride in sealed canisters on each transporter erector launcher vehicle, protected from weather and handling damage, combat ready for years without inspection. Launch uses the cold eject method. A gas charge hurls the missile vertically from its tube. Only after clearing the vehicle does the rocket motor ignite, accelerating to over Mach 6. Since the missile goes straight up before turning, the launcher has full 360-degree coverage without needing to aim. The early 5V55 series reached 47 to 90 kilometers using command guidance. Effective, but with accuracy limitations at range. The breakthrough was the 48N6 family with track via missile guidance. The ground radar illuminates the target. The missile's onboard receiver picks up the reflected signal and relays it back to the ground station. The station's powerful computers compare the signals, calculate the target's precise position relative to the missile, and transmit corrections. Accuracy improves as the missile closes in, the opposite of command guidance. The target's radar warning receiver gets minimal information about whether it's actually being engaged. The 48N6E2 reaches 195 kilometers with a 143 kilogram fragmentation warhead that detonates by proximity fuse. On the other end of the family sits the S-300 Veit, built by Anti for ground forces on tracked chassis. Its 9M82 Giant interceptor specializes in ballistic missile defense, with the export Anti-2500 claiming 200-kilometer range against aircraft at hypersonic speeds, sensors that see everything, a brain that thinks in milliseconds, interceptors that reach out nearly 200 kilometers at 6 times the speed of sound. Together, they form something far more than a missile battery. They form a predator, and stepping inside its engagement zone remains one of the most dangerous things a combat pilot can do. Specifications are one thing. War is another. Since the Soviet collapse, the S-300 has been exported to at least 16 nations. Its real-world story is complicated, messy, and revealing. Sometimes the S-300 doesn't need to fire to change the balance of power. When Iran received its S-300 PMU-2 batteries in 2016, a deal worth around $800 million, the Persian Gulf strategic equation shifted overnight. Deployed around sensitive nuclear and military installations, the message was clear. Any air operation against Iran now faced modern defenses with ranges approaching 200 kilometers. When Russia delivered S-300s to Syria in 2018, it was as much diplomatic as military. Foreign air forces operating in the region were forced to alter tactics, flying more complex profiles, relying on standoff weapons, investing in electronic warfare. Whether Syrian S-300s ever successfully engaged a target remains debated. But the operational complication they imposed was itself a powerful form of deterrence. Greece offers a unique case, a Russian-built S-300 PMU-1 inside a NATO country, deployed on Crete after being rerouted from Cyprus. It has participated in NATO exercises, giving the alliance invaluable intelligence on the system's radar signatures and behavior. The most ruthless test has been Ukraine, where both sides field the system. Ukraine inherited substantial ES-300 arsenals from the Soviet collapse, forming the backbone of its air defenses when Russia invaded in February 2022. In those critical early months, Ukrainian S-300s denied Russia the rapid air superiority Moscow expected. Russian jets found themselves confronting long-range engagement zones, forced to operate cautiously or at dangerously low altitudes. Ukrainian officials claimed interception rates against cruise missiles reaching 80% by late 2022, unverifiable, but suggesting the system performed near its design capability. But the war has mercilessly exposed vulnerabilities. Russia, which built the system, has hunted Ukrainian batteries using reconnaissance drones to locate them, signals intelligence to pinpoint radar emissions, and Iskander-M ballistic missiles to destroy them. The Iskander performs evasive maneuvers and deploys decoys, making interception extremely difficult. Drone footage from the Odessa region confirmed the destruction of some of Ukraine's last S-300 PS launches, with similar losses documented throughout 2024 and 2025. The attrition created a crisis. As early as November 2022, Ukrainian Air Force officials warned that dwindling S-300 missile stocks threatened their ability to operate. Leaked Pentagon documents from April 2023 confirmed American concerns. NATO members Slovakia and Bulgaria donated their own systems, but supplies eventually ran dry, forcing Western allies to fill the gap with Patriot batteries. On the Russian side, a grim improvisation emerged. Facing shortages of ground attack munitions, Russia adapted S-300 missiles for surface-to-surface strikes against Ukrainian cities near the front. Never designed for this role, the missiles lack precision guidance, but they arrive at multiple times the speed of sound with almost no warning. The S-300 repurposed from shield to bludgeon. Meanwhile, Ukraine has also begun localizing production of replacement missiles compatible with S-300 and S-400 launchers, an extraordinary effort to keep these Soviet-era platforms alive through domestic engineering rather than relying on dwindling stockpiles. With F-16 fighters now in Ukrainian service, the confrontation the S-300 was originally engineered for, Soviet-designed air defenses facing NATO's fourth-generation fighters in contested airspace, has become a grinding daily reality. The information fog is thick, with unverified claims of shootdowns from both sides fueling the propaganda war. But what is beyond doubt is that the ES-300 remains absolutely central to this conflict, not as a relic gathering dust, but as an active, evolving, and deadly battlefield participant that both sides are simultaneously trying to use and destroy. So is the S-300 an outdated artifact or a genuinely dangerous system? It depends on who's flying against it. The historical significance is beyond argument. The S-300 forced the entire Western military establishment to rethink air combat doctrine. Before it, the assumption was that superior aircraft could punch through any defense with speed, altitude, and numbers. The S-300 shattered that. Air forces had to develop stealth, advanced electronic attack, and precision standoff weapons specifically to counter S-300 class threats. Every stealth aircraft flying today owes part of its existence to this system. Its legacy runs through modern Russian air defense. The S-400 Triumph, originally designated the S-300 PMU-3, is a direct descendant with more powerful radars and missiles reaching 400 kilometers. The S-500 Prometei targets hypersonic and exo-atmospheric threats. Bunkin's architecture didn't just produce a weapon, it produced a dynasty. Today, the S-300 remains lethal against the majority of the world's air forces. Fourth-generation fighters without advanced electronic warfare face mortal risk inside its engagement zone. At an estimated $115 to $250 million per battery versus $500 million for the S-400. It's an extraordinarily cost-effective deterrent. But vulnerabilities are now starkly visible. Cheap reconnaissance drones can detect an activated radar's emissions and relay coordinates for a precision strike at a fraction of the battery's cost. Loitering munitions execute the kill autonomously. Against fifth-generation stealth aircraft with networked sensor fusion, the S-300's older radars face a challenge they weren't designed for. The lesson from every nation that has deployed the S-300 in hostile environments is consistent. The system remains dangerous, but it is not invulnerable. It was designed for a world of manned bombers and cruise missiles. It now inhabits a world of swarming drones, hypersonic glide vehicles, and stealth fighters that may never appear on its radar. And yet the US-300 endures. It fights in Ukraine. It deters across the Middle East. It sits in arsenals on 4 continents. Dismissing it would be arrogant. And arrogance toward a system that throws missiles at you at 6 times the speed of sound tends to be fatal. The grumble still growls. Its voice is older now, hoarser, but it still carries across the battlefield with enough authority to make any pilot think twice. Boris Vasilyevich Bunkin, the quiet radar engineer who took on the impossible in 1968, built a system that redefined air warfare for half a century, a weapon whose DNA lives on in every modern air defense platform Russia fields. His final chapter has not been written. The S-300's final chapter has not been written. Not by a long shot. The S-300 story is about the oldest dynamic in warfare, the eternal duel between sword and shield. Every defense inspires a sharper attack. Every attack demands a stronger defense. It never ends. But I want your take. Do you believe the S-300 still matters in the age of drones, stealth, and hypersonics? Or has its time finally passed? Tell me in the comments. And if this kind of deep analysis, pulling apart the engineering, history, and hard truth behind the world's most consequential weapons, is what you're here for, subscribe and hit notifications. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next breakdown.